This is our 119th Coffee and Conversation. These go back to 2012 when we first started doing these. And today's no different with regard to just another great talk. Don Seibold, U.S. Navy veteran, World War II, will be doing the presentation for today. And once again, just great content with regard to the talk for today. And we'll get started here shortly. Just a couple of quick comments. We couldn't put on these programs without your generosity with regard to donations. That's how we survive with regard to the things that we do. And again, with regard to all of these great talks that we do and all the programs that we put on. This past year, 2016, with the programs that we do, the outreach programs that we do outside of the museum, we contacted and engaged over 5,500 patrons this past year. And since 2012, 2013, our outreach and in-house patron contact has just been escalating each year, year over year. And it's because people like yourself that have done this in conjunction with us, and we thank you for that. Restrooms over here to my left, just past the office. We have upcoming now in the next month, February. We have our next speaker will be February 11th. Dr. Jeff Hunt, who is a professor at Red Rocks Community College, will be talking about the 1st Colorado Volunteer Infantry that goes back to the war in the Philippines, 1898, 1899. And then we have not identified, although we have several candidates for our February 25th talk, and we will make that confirmation here shortly. So the 2 talks in February will be the 11th and the 25th. So just keep checking our website and also the Broomfield Enterprise for the upcoming talk on the 25th of February. If you don't already know, our hours of operation are Saturdays 9 to 3 and then Thursdays 10 to 2. And also the success that we had this past year is attributable to that 2nd day of operation that we had this past year. We had about of the total number of people that came through the museum, 30% of those people came through on that 2nd day on Thursday this past year. So that was one of the great things that we had as a result of that 2nd day opening. We've done some improvements in the museum for those of you that haven't been here for a while or haven't been here at all. If you see any of us volunteers, either the blue vests or the red vests, I wouldn't mind getting some input from you, what you think about the entryway improvements that we've done here, or just the exhibits in general. So if you wouldn't mind, just talk to any of us about what you think about what we've done in the museum lately. So I'd appreciate that very much, as we all would. So I'll stop talking unless anybody has any questions or comments before we get started. And again, thank you very much for coming. And I'll turn the microphone, and Don already has his own, so we'll get started. And thank you all. Thank you as well to the family, Nancy Watkins, for helping us get all of the stuff together for the talk, and of course to Don, and appreciate Don's service very much. Thank you.
Good morning. The last time I had an audience of this size was about 1940 when I graduated from high school. Well, I was born in the big city of Ackley, Iowa, which is a town of about 1,800 people. It's best located in a line, or the intersecting line. If you draw a line from Chicago to Omaha and another one from Minneapolis to St. Louis, it's about at the crossing point of the two. there's railroads that started this town, and I was born in 1922. I had a very good friend. His name was Chet Schultz, and his name will probably come up as Chet, and I'll be Don, and trying to lay this out so you can understand what's going on. I was born in Ackley and attended the kindergarten through high school, and during that time I played a little football and was captain of the football team, and then I attended Iowa State University, and my friend Chet also attended Iowa State. And I studied electrical engineering, and he studied architectural engineering. And we were there from 1940 till December 7th, 1941, which all of you will know when the war started for the United States. And I was at Iowa State at that time as a sophomore. And since the United States was building up such a large Navy, they needed a lot more engineering officers, and so they wanted us to stay in school and finish our work. Well, I stayed at Iowa State until about the first of the year in 1944, and then was called up active duty by the Navy, and was assigned to one of the rooms in one of the girls' dormitories, and my friend Chet was in a room right across the hall from me. And we were both there for a while. Then we were sent to the Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland, and he and I were both there at the same time. In fact, we were in the same room there was about 400 people in that group, and he and I and two other guys from Cleveland, Ohio were in this one room, and that's one of the unusual things that occurred, because alphabetically Schultz and Seibold are pretty close to each other. On April 26, 1944, we graduated from the Naval Academy as an ensign, and about 10 days later, I was assigned to the USS West Virginia, which had been sunk at Pearl Harbor. And so I went back to Ackley on the way to Bremerton, Washington, where I was aboard the West Virginia. And the West Virginia had been sunk at Pearl Harbor. And it was kind of I'll give you a little pitch on that. It received 7 torpedoes and 2 bombs at Pearl Harbor, and settled in the mud, and was saved from turning over like the Oklahoma did by the action of counter flooding that was done by one of the officers on board. He got a medal for that. And I was of course, a very junior ensign in the engineering department, and started in the electrical division, where there's about 104 engineers, and about several months later, I was transferred to the B division, which is the boiler division, and I was in that for a while. Then I was transferred to the A division, which is auxiliaries. That included the evaporators and the steering and anchor engines and what have you. I was assigned to battle station in the steering engine room. The steering engine room was set up so that you had varying ways of controlling the ship's rudder from above or wherever on the ship. First way, it was 2 hydraulic motors or engines that operated the rudder under normal circumstances. And if things got tougher, why, we could resort to a pneumatic system that also operated the rudder. And as a last resort, we had a wheel about 15 feet in diameter that we could operate the rudder from with manpower, if it got down to that. It didn't. So we had a pretty soft job compared to a lot of people in the war. When I went aboard the West Virginia, kind of green as far as ships were concerned, and the West Virginia had been refitted and equipped with a lot more newer gunnery facilities, like our main battery remained the same, but we had 16 5-inch guns, which had 4 so-called turrets on each one, or for 2 of them on each side of the ship. Some of the newer battleships had 5 on each side, but we were the latest version of the old battleships. Well, we were headed for the South Pacific. We got out there in the Philippines and bombarded the shore and tried to help to keep the troops alive that were doing all the dirty work. We didn't have anything too important to do, but shortly after we got out the Philippines and performed this gunnery for the shore troops, the Japs decided they wanted to come down and wipe out the American fleet. And so they started from Japan and came down, and we were there and waiting for them. We had 6 old battleships, which West Virginia was the newest one, and it included the Maryland, which had the 16-inch guns, the California and the Tennessee and the Mississippi, I think it was, all had 14-inch guns. And we formed a column of battleships, of which West Virginia led the battle line, and we're waiting for the Japs to come down and pay us a visit. So they did, and there's a map up there shows the Philippines, and the West Virginia. Well, at Surigao Strait, we had the other ships with us, and along with a couple of heavy cruisers and about 35 destroyers. And as the Japs started to come up through the strait from the south end, we were running back and forth across the north end of the strait, and the other destroyers and the cruisers engaged the enemy first, and we finally we picked them up at about 40,000 yards with the latest radar that was then available in the South Pacific, and followed them as they tried to come up through the strait. The destroyers and the cruisers opened fire first, and then about 6 minutes to 4 on the 25th of October 1944, we opened fire. Was the first battleship to open fire, and we emptied about 93 rounds of 16-inch with 8 guns in about 9.5 minutes. And the first salvo struck the Jap battleship, and it eventually sunk. That was the major operation we were in, but after that we were still bombarding in the Philippines and messed up one propeller. So we had to go into a portable dry dock that had been brought out in the South Pacific, and they repaired the propeller. And we were, about that time, the Americans had started operations on Iwo Jima, and so we were a little bit late. They started about earlier in the morning, about 10 o'clock that morning. We got to Iwo Jima and started firing, and consequently we had a pretty good operation there going. And on the strait, as we were up on the north end of it, we really did a lot of good shooting that was accomplished by our Gunnery Department. I wasn't any part of that, so I can't take the credit for any of that. And after Iwo Jima, we went to Okinawa, and we were hit with a Kamikaze, which is a Jap suicide airplane, and we lost only about 6 people at that time. And that was not the worst time, but we were lucky that the bomb didn't go off that hit us. Pardon? It's showing on there. It's No, excuse me. It hit on the rear of the, towards the rear of the ship. Back in here someplace.
Yeah.
But,
I'll hold it up. It was hit right about here is where he says. And these other points, and when you look at this later on, this shows you where the bombs hit at Pearl and then the torpedoes. And then after it's retrofitted, I think it was hit here.
after Okinawa, which was a pretty rough battle for the Army and the Marines, we headed back to the States and after the atomic bombs were dropped, and we celebrated that. But after that, a few months later, I was discharged from the Navy and returned to Iowa State to finish up one more season of football. And I was kind of lucky in that regard. I played freshman football and got a numeral then. And that was in 1940 and 41. In 42 and 43, I was on the varsity, and in 1946, came back and helped the football team. After that, I went to work for Western Electric in Chicago, and I was there for about 5 years. My friend Chet Schultz told me that it would be a good idea to become a construction company in Ottumwa, Iowa. So we moved back to Ottumwa and lived there for about 5 years and didn't get rich, so decided to go back to work for Western Electric. And so I finished my Western Electric career on October 31st, 1985. So I've been around a while. If you have any questions, I can try and answer them for you.
Don,
Yeah.
did you ever have any, the Yamato, the Japanese battleship, I think was a 57,000 ton huge thing. Did you ever have any contact with that?
Anything, what?
The Japanese battleship Yamato
Yeah.
was the largest in the world. I think it was a 57,000 ton.
No, we were about 35,000 tons.
But you had no contact with that.
I don't believe so.
Good.
We were pretty happy with what the Gunnery Department did, though. So if you have any other questions, why,
About the wasn't that at Leyte Gulf?
yeah, that was one of the Japanese ships.
That was the other big one, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure the size of it. I don't recall that anyway. So, any other questions?
Don, I just want to point out that we have the sister ship, a model of the sister ship to the West Virginia.
The Colorado, isn't it? Yeah, the Colorado and the West Virginia and the Maryland were pretty much the same up till 1940. Or West Virginia, after it sunk, was raised and had more anti-aircraft equipment than any of the other ones, other than the brand new ones that were started after 1937.
When was the West Virginia originally?
Pardon?
When was the West Virginia
It was commissioned in 1923. The United States didn't build any or even start any other battleships until 1937 when the Washington and the North Carolina were started. Yeah.
Turrets, your 5-inch guns, how many turrets for those?
I didn't hear you.
5-inch.
How many turrets have your 5-inch guns?
Your
You hear
5-inch
that?
guns, Don.
What?
Your 5-inch guns, how many?
We had 16 5-inch. We had 4 so-called turrets on each side with 2 guns in each one. We had about 40 16 40 millimeters, no, 10 squads of 40 millimeter guns and about 20 millimeter guns for close-in engagement with the aircraft. And when we were hit, we also got parts of the airplane that hit us, and I had some dice that were made from that Japanese airplane. I haven't got them here with me, but I do have a piece of the deck from the West Virginia when it was finally cut up about 1969, I think it was.
Don, you told me once you couldn't go through the Panama Canal.
No, we were too wide.
Why?
Because of the extra material, or they widened the ship, put other bulkheads out further, and we couldn't get through.
Can you explain crossing the T?
We crossed the T in the Battle of Surigao Strait, and that's the classic naval maneuver when you can have a ship going along like this with fire and all the guns at the enemy, and the worst he can do is, if he's coming at you, is get his forward guns on.
Were you still on board?
Pardon?
Were you still on board for the signing of the surrender at
Yes, yes.
I had a brother there too.
Pardon?
I had a brother there also.
Any other questions that there's a piece of the West Virginia here, right here, and when it was cut up, why it was salvaged, and
Some of the gray painting from the deck. Love things like this. Wonder who stood on that. Yeah, there's quite a few. There's some nice photos of, I think here's one of, it looks like Mount Fuji in the background in Japan. And then there's some other things here. So, across the equator, he's got a little booklet here, kind of identifying that. It's kind of,
that's one thing I could tell you a little bit about.
there's, go ahead.
We were going South Pacific, and we'd been there bombarding for a short while. And after we crossed the equator, they usually have a celebration of sorts aboard. The pollywogs and the shellbacks were the ones that had been initiated. And I was in the engineering control room after we crossed the equator as a junior officer in there, and 2 huge guys came down the ladder into the engineering control room and yelled at me, "I relieve you, sir." And they grabbed me, and I endured a little torture at their expense. I don't know how many of you been exposed to that, but we had a fairly good celebration of it. It was good after I was through with it. Oh, I don't know much else I can tell you, but you want to ask some questions, well, I'll try to answer them. Yeah.
I just want to, first of all, thank you, and also point out that this display right here is a man, Pete Peterson, who was on the West Virginia at Pearl Harbor. And you might,
I had a friend of mine was on it at Pearl Harbor, and he was also one of the officers that continued on board it until the end of the war.
How many men did they lose in
I did. I'm a little bit hard of hearing, so
How many men were lost on the Leyte at Pearl Harbor?
about 104, I believe it was. 104 people were killed on the West Virginia. And one interesting thing about it, Pearl Harbor, it was sunk, and about 3 weeks later they raised or pumped out enough water that guys that were still down in the forward engine or forward area were still alive, and they recovered. Yeah.
I read recently that the Japanese were so intent on sinking the battleships they forgot to take out the oil supplies that were just over the hill. And if they had done that, the American fleet would have been without fuel for the short duration. So,
That's
their major mistake.
yeah.
Is that a special program where they took engineering students and put them in Indianapolis for a year or something? What was that? What was that program?
Could you come up a little closer?
What was the program at Annapolis?
What?
Was it just for engineering? For Annapolis, what was your program?
The program in Annapolis, they had the regular 4-year group, but we were in the first group, Chet Schultz and I, that were in the same group, the first group that went to the Naval Academy, and there was 4 people to a room, and at that time, Chet Schultz, my buddy, and I were assigned to the same room because of the Schultz and Seibold are alphabetically real close to each other, and there's only four in a room, and there was about 400 in the group that went down there and then later went to the fleet or wherever.
What were your
Navy.
classes?
Fine.
What kind of classes did you take? What kind of classes at the Naval Academy?
Oh, boilers and other electrical stuff. Chet wasn't very well acclimated with the electrical part of it, but we helped him along a little bit.
That was just a 4-month program that you were in.
Yes.
4-month program.
The unusual thing about it was the fact that two boys or men from Ackley, Iowa were at the United States Naval Academy in the same room at the same time with two from Cleveland, Ohio. Rather unique. Yeah.
Was your friend also assigned to the West Virginia?
He was assigned to LCI 708, which is landing craft infantry, for somebody that isn't aware of what. And I was assigned to the West Virginia. His ship was at Okinawa at the same time we were, and they were making smoke to cover. The LCI was making smoke to cover up the battleships and the other ships that were there to prevent or help prevent the Japanese from finding the ships so they could bomb them.
Was he the same gentleman that you told me about years ago, that you were unloading munitions and his ship was in there too?
No, I don't recall that, Lou.
Don, the Kamikaze that hit the ship that was in Okinawa in '44, is that?
Yeah, it was on April 1st, the day they landed.
This is an interesting little thing I found in your memorabilia, and it talks about during the Battle of the Leyte Gulf, however duration you were there, apparently another Kamikaze plane attempted.
Oh, there was numerous ones did that.
Reference that this one was shot down there.
Well, we shot down, I don't remember how many.
More than that then, huh?
Yeah, well, a lot of them was concentration of fire from multiple number of ships, and
Obviously the Wheelie was a big target.
well, yeah, no doubt of that.
Was that called the last battle of the battleships? The Battle of Surigao? Is that the last battle of the battleships?
Was what?
You said that was the last battle of the battleships ever.
Yeah, the Battle of Surigao Strait was the last battle where battleships engaged battleships as such, and we did a good job there.
It's really historically significant, isn't it?
Barton?
I mean, you're talking hundreds of years of military warfare, and this one battle in Surigao.
Well, it was probably the most tons of ships that were engaged in it.
Yeah.
And
But it was the last one that pitted battleship. against
yeah, it was a battleship.
After that, it was
Yes,
The flat tops.
Right. more aircraft carriers nowadays. So, any other questions? Well,
You saw the flag at Mount Cervacci.
yes. When the troops got to the top at Iwo Jima, Mount Cervacci, I saw the flag that you see in all the war pictures nowadays from the deck of the West Virginia, which were very convenient, much more so than the Marines and the soldiers that landed there. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about what went on after Okinawa and before the atom bombs were dropped? What were you guys?
Well, we were out there bombarding in Okinawa and around that area until atomic bombs were dropped, and we were very, very happy to hear that. Some people don't think Harry Truman should have agreed to use those, but we were all for it.
That probably saved more lives than it could.
Barton?
That probably saved many, many more lives than it could.
Well, I think so. It killed quite a few Japanese, but we were getting ready to head for Japan after we were in Okinawa, and the war ended before that happened.
Actually, the Army division that was going to invade Japan was on the way at the time. So they were very happy to get shoot bombs stuff.
Any other questions I can try and answer?
Thank you, Don.
All right, thank you. Before we adjourn for the morning, I want to thank Don, I want to thank the family, and I want to present Don with a Museum Challenge coin for the talk. Don, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And again, thank you all for coming. Please take the time to look at some of the artifacts that Don and the family brought with them. And also take the time to look around the museum. We'd appreciate you doing that. And any questions, just check with any of us here, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thanks again for coming.